and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I prep pizza crusts so that we can have pizzas quick and easily throughout the week. I had already mixed up the pizza dough. The recipe I will link in the description. I do double the recipe whenever I make it because we go through so much pizza crust. So when I double it, we get 8 personal sized pizzas. So just catching you up, I mixed the dough, I let it rise for about an hour or two, and then here is me getting it ready for the second rise. Here I'm setting my timer for an hour for the second rise. Doesn't have to be exactly an hour, could be a little more, a little less, but you can see that the dough has risen up again. So now we're getting ready to divide it into the individual sizes that we're going to use to make the pizza crusts. Just like working with any sort of dough, you want to keep a lot of flour on hand to keep it from sticking to your work surface and your hands. And then I have this nifty little dough cutter thing, but of course if you just have like a big old knife, you can just use a regular old knife. So I cut it in half, then I cut those halves in half, and then I cut those halves in halves, and I end up with 8 little dough balls. And then at this point I'm going to put a wet towel over them so that they can rise up again just a little bit before I go ahead and roll them out. So if you're following along, this is the point at which you'll want to preheat your oven. You'll want to preheat it to about 450, but again, the recipe is linked in the description. I have pizza pans, I have pizza stones, because I had a lot to do and I was kind of in a hurry. I just used these cookie sheets with parchment paper, and then we put down a little bit of cornmeal because my husband and I kind of like that crunch at the bottom, and then I do spray it with olive oil. Because it's parchment paper, it is not necessary, but again, that's just how I like to do it. Now this is the point where things start to come together really quickly. I start to roll out the individual pizza crusts and start putting them onto the pans and putting them in the oven, and it kind of becomes a little bit of an assembly line until they're all done. Once the first crust is rolled out and ready to go in the oven, I put it right in the oven to really accomplish that assembly line so that I can have a process and get all 8 of those pizza crusts cooked in a pretty timely manner. And here's mommy's little helper learning the ropes for when those little fingers are big enough to roll out dough. Now at this point I get out my cooling racks. These have been a kitchen must-have for me ever since I got into kind of baking and cooking seriously. It helps tremendously to have a cooling rack, whether you're doing muffins, cakes, pizza dough, bread. It really makes a big difference and makes it a lot easier. For me, as the pizza doughs are coming out of the oven, I can just stack them up on here.
She may be the key to China's undoing.
So here are the first 2 pizza crusts. Remember, the one has been in the oven a little bit longer than the other one. So here is actually the first one, nice and golden brown on the bottom, just like I like to see. So I'm gonna let it cool for a little bit while I get the next pizza crust into the oven so that I can kind of keep the process going and get this done in a timely manner. Now, I don't know how to throw pizza dough. I've tried, I made a mess. Really not that important to me, so as you can see, I just used a rolling pin, and our pizza crusts have been just fine. Now, you saw me poke holes in the crust with a fork. You do want to do that or else it can get kind of bubbly and warped while it's in the oven. So now I'm going to get this 4th pizza crust in the oven, and then I'm going to start on the pizza that we're actually going to have for dinner on this particular night. You can use whatever toppings you like. We're simple in this house, so it's sauce, cheese, and pepperoni. Remember, if you're using stuff with a higher water content like vegetables, it might change how you want to cook it. Just keep that in mind so you don't end up with like a floppy and watery pizza. Sometimes I'll put the pizza crust in with just the sauce on it if the sauce is looking a little bit watery, so that can evaporate off of it, but the consistency of this sauce was just right, so I just went ahead and put all the toppings on there. Now sometimes, as you can see, we do put that crushed red pepper on there. If you like a little bit of spice to your pizza, definitely would recommend. And then also in this instance, I did have some fresh mozzarella, so I was able to use that. Definitely makes a big difference and is a lot tastier healthier than the pre-shredded stuff, but again, whatever you've got. If you're going to do a special pizza night at your house, I would recommend getting some of that fresh mozzarella. And speaking of special pizza night at your house, I also like to grate a little bit of Parmesan cheese on ours when it's a special night. This was a special night, so I did go ahead and put some of that on there. And then here is the final product. I love having fresh homemade pizza at our house. It makes us all so happy. We all love pizza. In fact, I call it pizza medicine. And as far as the rest of the pizza crust, I have an extra large Ziploc bag. So once they're completely cooled, I'll put them all in that extra large Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer, and then we've got pizza crusts. And from there, you can make a pizza in your oven in about 10 or 15 minutes. So it's a great option for lunch or a night where you don't really feel like cooking. All you need is your sauce, cheese, and toppings, and everyone's eating and everyone's happy. So I hope you like this recipe. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video.
Paint the sky your favorite color. Your favorite color.